Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of this hybrid platforms trend series where we're talking about taming the complexity of cloud as we move into the future. In our previous video, Neil talked us through the platform layer, the infrastructure components, the compute and storage that would power these modern application platforms that you're building. In this session, we're going to hand over to Darren from Nutanix to talk about the cloud infrastructure layer that provides the capabilities to build these new applications and run your virtual workloads. Darren, why don't you take everyone through it?
Thanks, Rob. So for this next section, I'm going to speak specifically around Nutanix. And rather than take on everything in one go, I'd like to break it down into 3 layers. So let's start at the bottom. We've heard from Neil around the hardware and the provision and the capability there. We need something to sit on top of that, so most commonly a hypervisor. When Nutanix came to market many years ago, we pioneered hyperconverged infrastructure. There's so much more to that today. Let's think about the ability to deliver virtual machines, but also our containers. We know that this is rapidly increasing in adoption now within organizations. Nutanix has that native capability built in. We need to think about, once we've built these applications, whether in virtual machines or within containers, how we're going to protect them. Talk about recovery. We can go between multiple sites, replicating the data and the applications side by side. You may want to split them, of course, depending on the needs and actually the SLAs that are imposed by governments and organizations that regulate our enterprises. We're going to also talk about our storage. There's many types, and as a software-defined solution that we have, we can present out file services, block storage, and object storage. File obviously very well suited for our virtual desktop infrastructures, that end-user computing solution. What about the object store, being able to help our DevOps requirements out there, or even linking this to recovery? We've got our backup ecosystem who want to take the data, protect it, and then write it to object store. So the event of something malicious happening internally, this data can't be overwritten. So it's a really good tick box in that respect from a data protection side. Then the other angle, block services. Now, there's going to be workloads that can't be virtualized. Now, this could be due to licensing implications. Maybe we've got some very large database servers where we want to keep them on physical tin. What about in a manufacturing world where we've got peripheral cards installed, so they're controlling equipment? That can't be virtualized, but you still need storage, highly available, low latency, and high performance. So we cover off all those 3 presentations just using software. Plus, we have the ability to report. Let's see the insights, quotering, maybe even monitor some of the threats that can be happening within our file services environment as well. So some really good insights we can present. And that kind of last layer, which completes the whole Nutanix cloud platform, is around automation. I talked about virtual machines and containers. We don't want people running this manually because, of course, in large organizations, it's very time consuming, can be prone to error and risk as well from a security standpoint. So automation, self-service is one core component that fits inside the whole cloud platform. We think about management. We need to think about APIs as well. We are an API-first software-defined solution, and we know that many organizations like to include Nutanix within their own automation engines as well as they're controlling and interacting with it. So we publish all this information out. Cost governance is very important, but also data governance, and they go hand in our software solution. Data governance, we need to consider what's appropriate. We heard in one of the previous videos when Neil was talking around how applications and data need to be located in the correct location. This can be country bound as well. What happens when a merger and an acquisition happens where data then can't reside in a certain country for whatever reason? We need to be able to report on that and relocate it so fines aren't imposed. And cost. Cost is always going to be a challenge with IT. We know initially we're able to reduce expenditure as we change our platforms, but ultimately if we don't manage and govern this, the cost can go absolutely out of control. So we can report on this, cost centers, we can do projections as well to support the business for their needs. We're going to dig a little bit more into some of these areas later on in one of our other sessions, but that should get you going on this first introduction to Nutanix today. So Rob, over to you. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about this as well.
Thanks, Darren. I mean, what a great story as far as how we activate the software that sits on top of the Cisco hardware layer to really deliver them core services. So, I speak to people and they're like, oh, Nutanix is just HCI. But when you look at that breadth of capabilities from file to object to containers to databases, to then the core services in, snapshotting and storage and replication and data protection, it's far bigger than a HCI only story these days. And actually that ecosystem is so powerful for the overall operation capability, etc.
And in this video, we're just kind of scratching the surface of what can be achieved as well.
We could spend the next 4 hours talking about this and probably still only scratch the surface. So we really have just got to give people an idea of the scope of capability here. But one of the things I think, Neil, I'd like to pick up with you is networking is such a big area of all of these platforms and actually can be one of the most complex areas around provisioning and integration, etc. And when we look at that timeline for deployment of a new application, then we've got to go off to a new team and bring other people in. That really extends that delivery time, which is one of the challenges of traditional infrastructure a lot of the time. But what's been happening in that world as far, Cisco are a networking company. Nutanix have a networking story. How is that joining together to provide that simplicity from a customer's perspective?
So Rob, we've always, as you would imagine, 40-year history of networking and 10, 12 years of real data center networking, if you like. You'd expect us to have a position on all of this. And our view has always been that if you're a server virtualization engineer, if you're the person who is responsible for administering this platform, do your skill sets actually extend towards and need to extend towards the network? Wouldn't it be simpler if we could pre-provision the network capabilities that you needed and you simply consumed them as part and parcel of either your manual or automated process for bringing up a set of workloads on the platform? And that's where this idea of integrating what we do from a data center networking perspective, particularly in the world of application-centric infrastructure, and integrating that into the distributed virtual switch that sits within the Nutanix platform, that's a critical part for us. Because what we can then do is we can then let network engineering teams, with all of the controls and requirements and capabilities that they need to have in place, pre-provision the right port groups so that then somebody can come along and simply just consume those. And so we're minimizing errors. We're reducing operational risk again. We're not expecting engineers who perhaps have never had to delve into the world of networking to suddenly pick up the baton of networking. I think it's another one of those critical elements of co-engineering between Nutanix and Cisco in terms of how we bring this overall platform to market. Hyperconvergence has always tried to sort of shy away a little bit from the network. I think our joint solution brings the network in as a core component of what we need to be able to do. And I don't know what you think on that, Darren.
Yeah, I like the consumption. I think that's a really good way of positioning it, given that organizations are running at scale nowadays, and thinking back to potentially some of our early days where as virtualization engineers, we used to request from the network, and if you happened to get the same engineer, they knew what you wanted, and then that person was on holiday, and then you'd battle with those conversations again, and I've been there in the real world. So by having this, as you say, look, it's a consumption model, it makes it easier. Certainly from our side, with our cloud architectures and the way that we mirror the hyperscalers, it can all be automated. So reducing the risk, as you mentioned as well, takes away all the complexity. So it's a really good story. Yes, we do things like microsegmentation, so the traffic doesn't have to get out there. So there's elements of being able to do some stuff within that software-defined data center, but of course we still need the real world, the real equipment to get out there and do the things we're doing. So anyway, Rob, I want to hear about real world cases where this has been done, because we're talking here, it's all very simple, but customer stories.
It's all conceptual at the end of the day.
Exactly.
I think if we look at that wider cloud infrastructure layer we talked about here, so not just the networking piece, but that entire stack that you talked about earlier on in the video, and we look at some of the work we've done in multiple NHS organisations within the UK, and taking what has been traditionally quite a complex platform that's traditionally had to be on premises due to location of theatres and A&E and places like that, but they're still looking to take advantage of cloud in the right place. So we did a large project earlier in the year for a specific organisation, can't name names, but how they could replace all of their disparate technologies. They had 3-tier, they had some HCI, they had different hypervisors, they had a bit of cloud, and provide them that single consistent operating layer to put workloads in the right place, with all of them integrations we talked about, has given them such simplicity and actually a lot less downtime. Yeah, a lot less risk within the organization. And when you're in an NHS, risk is really important from that side of it. So yeah, it's got some really great case studies of real world examples of this stuff, which is, it's great. It's not like we're just hoping, smoke and mirrors at the end of the day. But yeah, thanks guys for your time. And thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully you've now got a bit more of an understanding of how the hardware and software layers join together to provide that platform to you deliver modern applications and traditional workloads across any location. In the next video, we're going to delve into the operational layer that wraps around that then, to how we can make sure we can monitor, govern, and manage this environment in a simple way. So hopefully you can join us for the next session. Speak to you soon.